Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Welcome back to Horror Analysis with me, Drew. Hi there. We are going to continue in Section E of our class, non-narrative horror. As in most of Section E, I will repeat that I don't really think that non-narrative horror is actually a thing. Most of the ones that we've talked about are certainly telling a story. Narrative means telling a story. Some of them might be able to get away with not telling a story that we know, but they're certainly evoking a story. And today is no exception. Today we're going to be going over horror theater and horror dance. Most of those, of course, will be telling stories. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 things that are going to be talked about. All of them are stories, with maybe the exception of Hexenstance by Mary Wigman. And we'll talk about Mary Wigman because she's actually one of my favorite philosophers of art. Her diaries or memoirs just did a fantastic job, and a big basis of stuff I've talked about in what I've been writing. However, I'm going to go in chronological order just because it makes more sense, with the exception of Hexenstance and maybe a little bit of Rite of Spring, just because Rite of Spring's storyline is foggy, but that's for the good, on purpose, And Rite of Spring, may or may not fit into horror. It's weird. It's unsettling, which is, what we're after. Horror fans like unsettling, so I figured I'd toss it in there. We're going to start chronologically, and the first thing I have to talk about is Robert Le Diable. I'm horrible at French pronunciation, so actually I have the information page here. Now, Robert Le Diable. It's all the pages here. If you want to pause and read it, you're welcome to. Robert Le Diable was William the Conqueror's grandfather or something, as I think was the... Oh, I have the page up here. That's Giselle, that's Rich Spring, that's... Oh, can I? No, I can't. That's Rite of Spring again. Good job, Drew. There we go. The character Rite of Spring... Sorry, the character Robert Le Diable. The father of William the Conqueror was alleged to be the son of the devil by whoever people, and they sort of played around with the story to make Robert Le Diable. Now what was the words? The theater where this was first performed at the Paris Opera in 1831, November of 1831. The Paris Opera wanted to demonstrate the building's new gas lighting, and the gas lighting made ghastly effects. Now that's a difficult sentence to say. And there's a portion of this, the second act, where it takes place in a graveyard. And the ghosts of nuns My old professor used to tell the story, and he told it so perfectly. I'm going to try to emulate. It's a romantic ballet, and romanticism. The point of romanticism was a counter to the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment said, "Oh, okay, we can solve all our problems by science." Romanticism said, "No, you can't." And then, of course, the penultimate romance novel, romantic era novel, was Frankenstein. The scientist tries to solve the problems through science. He creates a monster instead. Right? So, this one is, the ghosts of nuns who didn't, how did Professor say it? The ghosts of nuns who weren't true to their vows, who, in the Enlightenment era, you would assume all these nuns would, a portion of nuns would just not keep true to their vows. And then the Romantic era comes, and they've died off, and then they rise from the dead because, the Enlightenment was wrong. And the Romantic, there is the supernatural as well. So, these nuns have a ballet, the Ballet of the Nuns from Robert Le Diable. It was a white-clad nuns return from their tombs. It's called a Ballet Blanc. It was not your typical tutu type ballet. The ballet, they're long skirted. That's a great picture as well. They're long dressed dancers. Actually, I found better pictures than this of the actual costuming, but the costuming's not what it is. Here's the nuns rising and marching around being ghosts. That's creepy. It's unsettling. There's the nuns going after Robert Le Diable. I don't know why. In this version, he's in a suit jacket. I guess it's some sort of update. And here's the suit version again. He's in suspenders and a suit jacket here. I don't get it, but they're attacking him at this point. Seems they're trying to seduce him at this point. This is the better pictures I found, more than true to the original. Of course, the original was, I think it's noted on here, it's lost for forever because the choreography in 1831, there wasn't any real way to photograph it or, notate it. Le Bon notation or any other of the dance notations hadn't been invented in 1831, so any early choreography is lost to the sands of time. Like a lot of early film, because the filming was just, of different quality and just disintegrated. That is Robert Le Diable. The Ballet of the Nuns, which is Professor Harris's favorite description, and I really like it too. I did watch a few reimaginings of it. The music, of course, is available, so someone choreographed it into what they thought it would be, or into what they thought would be good, whichever one works. Next is a ballet called Giselle. Robert Le Diable was 1831. Giselle was 1841. It's called Giselle ou les Willis, means or the Willies or Willis. It's Willis, I think. Let me double check that. Willis. Um, the synopsis of the play, the ballet, is a woman falls in love with a guy, finds out he's a duke, and as a duke is betrothed to another aristocrat, and dies of a broken heart. She's buried. The duke goes and visits her grave, sad and penitent. And the willies come out. The Willis? I don't know how to pronounce the word. Now, I did look it up earlier. Giving someone the willies, or something gives me the willies, might be from this. There is some argument about where it comes from. There's willy in German hints at ghosts, or some slang German willy hints at ghosts. Giselle, I think, is obviously the translation is obviously French, but I'm not sure if the. Oh yeah, of course it is, because it was done by Théophile Gautier, who we talked about previously, and of course, Les Orientales by Victor Hugo is one of the inspirations for the ballet. But Gautier wrote the story of it, I think. Wrote the libretto. And the willies, as I was saying, I got distracted there, are ghosts of dead women who come up to the surface and doom men to dance to death with them. Being it's ballet, the easiest way for ballet ghosts to kill someone is to dance them to death. Which, in a ballet mindset, makes sense in some strange sort of way, if you get in the ballet mindset. Was it Petipa? Oh, I saw Petipa's name on here. Why didn't I see that earlier? The traditional choreography has been passed down to present day, derives primarily from revivals staged by Marius Petipa during the late 19th and early 20th century. Imperial Ballet of St. Petersburg. Petipa is one of the really big names in ballet. Classical ballet. Russian classical ballet. Eclipsed only by the next guy we're going to be talking about, and when we get to the next ballet we're going to be talking about, Rite of Spring, which is Nijinsky. So these willies, I'm going to say willies because I have that in my head. Willis? I have no idea how to pronounce it. Willis. Good luck. So these ghosts come up and try to convince Giselle, the dead woman, to dance this Duke guy to death and join them in their revenge-ness. And they actually dance another of the admirers of Giselle to death. But Giselle, after dancing a little bit with the Duke, which is this picture here, decides to forgive him. The Willis, whatever. Now we'll take a little bit of. That was 1841. We'll take a little bit of a break for 50 years. Until 1897, that's when, in France, the Grand Guignol opens. I've mentioned the Grand Guignol before in our history section. From 1897 to 1962, the Grand Guignol Theatre in France, a very small theatre, showed really, what would you call it? Graphic? Horror, I guess, is is the closest thing. They call it naturalistic something or other. What would you... I'm just going to look up what Wikipedia has to say about it. Grand Guignol. Theater in the Pigalle area of Paris, specialized in naturalistic horror shows. Amoral. Not immoral necessarily, but amoral. Meaning they didn't have a problem showing gore, blood, etc. This is some of the there's a lot of posters from Grand Guignol. There's they didn't pull any punches, and that's what we like here. That's why I like it in horror. They started off doing, basically gorier versions like Shakespeare's Titus Andronicus, etc. I just passed it again. There we go. The Duchess of Malfi and the White Devil. Yeah. Uh, 293 seats was the smallest theater in Paris at the time. And they would specialize in these sort of dark things. We have some pictures from the Grand Guignol from later era when photography was around. Well, photography was around in 1897. I shouldn't say that. Yeah. So, from the Grand Guignol, fake snuff films, I guess. I don't know. The plot of the plays I'm not familiar with. There was obviously many plays in its 70 odd years of being in existence, and they specialized in stuff that was horror. So I'm not familiar with all the plays, but they certainly ran a lot of plays, and they're all most were horror. Oh yeah. At the beginning of the 19th century, the 20th century, we'll get there. At the beginning of the 20th century, dance was still going. We had, Giselle, of course, was being done in Russia through Petipa from the beginning of the, from when it was originally done to when Petipa took it over in the 1890s to 1900s. And of course, he would be influencing Nijinsky in a little bit. Diaghilev and Nijinsky. Petipa worked with Diaghilev, I'm almost positive. Not fully positive, but I'm almost positive. Diaghilev was a producer at the Ballet Russe. But also in America and in other places, dance was opening up to not just be ballet. There's the birth of modern dance. And one of the mothers of modern dance, Isadora Duncan, also did not necessarily horror dance, but close to it. Not going to go through the birth of modern dance in long period of talking. Isadora Duncan was influential on lots of modern dance and lots of modern art in general. Modern film. The piece that I'm going to point out to you is Dance of the Furies, which I have a few pictures of here. Actually, this one as well. This is a class teaching the Dance of the Furies to children. Now, what you should see here is it's not your typical ballet hands gestures. The Furies were Greek monsters, for lack of a better word, Furies. Your typical ballet hands would be the supple, soft, even the ghost, even when they're attacking, it's not clawy. What Isadora Duncan did through most of Dance of the Furies is have claw hands. It's the T-Rex. It's also, if you see Max Schreck and Nosferatu, it's the this, which is also the classic vampire. This is monster hands. Which is an interesting thing for dance. And she does this through most of the... Isadora Duncan did this through most of her Dance of the Furies. It was hard for me to get a good picture of it. Sorry. Now, modern dance is going to branch out from there, and there's going to be other stuff involved. Of course, modern dance also encompasses Germany, which I'll talk about in a moment. But let's go back to ballet, and let's go back to the Ballet Russe. Petipa, I'm almost positive, is a precursor of Nijinsky in Ballet Russe. Petipa. I'm just going to click on Petipa real quick. 1 second. Marius Petipa, choreographer of the Golden Age of Russian Ballet. Da 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 da. Well, alright, so Nutcracker and Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, etc. Turn of the 20th century. I don't think he had... Maybe he didn't work with Diaghilev. He must have. What's going on here? Anyway, we'll talk about Diaghilev and Nijinsky, because that's where we're going to this. There's the Ballet Russe, which was the producer of which was Diaghilev, and the main choreographer around 1913 was Nijinsky. Now, Rite of Spring. Actually, let's grab some pics. Rite of Spring isn't necessarily horror. It's this pagan it describes a pagan rite of spring. When spring comes, the pagans do their rites, and these pagans essentially sacrifice a young girl, which is kind of horrific and horror-esque for that if you get into that girl's perspective. Now, the choosing of the girl is done by this one dance, which I rarely recommend. I was able to find it on Wikipedia. It's called the Sac du Printemps, in French. The mystic circles of the young girls. Let me see if I can. The pictures I wasn't able to find very well. This is the girls all dance around in a circle a couple of times until one is chosen from them twice. And once a girl is chosen twice, she stands in the middle. So she's singled out as being the victim for and the other ones dance around her and fall around her, and then she's taken by the elders and whatnot and then made to dance to death again, like the other stuff we mentioned before. So again, dancing to death in a ballet sort of mindset. If you want someone to die, you have to have them dance to death. But in this sense, if you watch the video, and I recommend watching the video for Rite of Spring, the Mystic Circles of the Young Girls, you get a real sense of anxiety for this young girl, since you know what happens. You know she's going to die, be sacrificed. And then there's the sacrificial dance, which is also very good to watch, and it is manic, disturbing, good. I recommend it to you. Actually, one of the pictures I almost picked was a picture from the Rite of Spring, and it just said, "This is not Swan Lake" above it. It's like, this is definitely not Swan Lake. This is actually after she does her manic dance and she dies. They hold her up. Speaking of the Ballet Russe and that sort of stuff, there was a very, very, very dark version of the Nutcracker, which I've mentioned before, I think, in the German, talking about the Germans, E.T.A. Hoffmann, who wrote the original Nutcracker, which wasn't that dark. He also wrote The Sandman, which was pretty dark. But there was a very dark version of the Nutcracker, but I can't find it. Wish I knew which version it was, but it was, it was pretty. It went out of its way to make the things as dark as possible. Right, so this is the ballet side of things. Back to modern dance. Not Isadora Duncan anymore. We're going to go to Germany, and we're going to go to Mary Wigman. Mary Wigman is a very, very interesting person. I'm not going to go over her full biography. The same year of Rite of Spring happened, she came out with Hexentanz. I don't think she was. I think Hexentanz was essentially when she was working with von Laban, Rudolf von Laban, who was a dance scholar and choreographer. Sort of her doctoral thesis of dance, for lack of a better word. Hexentanz is translates from German into witch's dance. Hex, like a German, a witch's hex. In Tanz, Tanz is dance. Tanz is dance. There we go. Now, I found out today, I wasn't aware of this, there's many versions of Hex and Taunts you can find on YouTube. Check them out; they're very cool. I found out today that the original didn't have music. She didn't do it with music, which makes it better for me. Most, I think all, it's been a couple weeks since I've watched it. I know most, I think possibly all of Hex and Taunts, there's no standing up in it. I mean, none of these other ones, none of the ballets certainly, but none of even Isadora Duncan would dream of not standing up to do dancing. I was like, no, what? We're going for a real pagan feel. This is actually Mary Vigmon's costume for this. For the feel of the actual witch, she's sitting down on a stage. It's not, but it seems like it's in a corner. It's very, she's looking down, and then she looks up and she's on her in a Indian style posture, crouched, and her dances from there are so much more disturbing because they are this sort of on the ground. I don't have the words for it. It's just fantastic. This is a modern person doing Mary Vigmon's dance, Hex and Taunts. I would say check out a couple of these videos, and then check it out and watch them muted as well, and realize that the original didn't have music to it. It's really cool. Mary Vigmon was an expressionist. An expressionist is trying to portray the emotion to you, the audience member. And we're not talking about this it's a witch's dance, but it's not like a Wicked Witch of the West dance. This is there's nothing Disney-fied about this kind of witch. It's cool. It's a very real feeling type thing, and for a real feeling witch, you don't want a Disney-fied witch. You want a Blair Witch, or a horror witch. I'm not saying it's horror. I'm not even sure of its narrative. This would be the one that I would be curious about. I think it certainly evokes a story, evokes emotion, but I think by watching it, you get a story in your head. Not even a full-fledged story, but certainly a part of a story in your head. And I think probably if you were to dance it, you would get the story in your head. So, as far as non-narrative, is this the one non-narrative horror dance? No, I don't think so, but it's the closest we come. Yeah. This, if you hadn't guessed, is probably my favorite out of this. Robert Le Diable coming close second with that. But the Willies from today, which I was checking out the Willies. It's interesting stuff. The rest of what we have are plays that happened in the latter part of the 20th century. You could probably guess which three I'm going to talk about. Give you 5 seconds to guess. From 1913 to 1979, there wasn't anything. This is essentially when, okay, we have movies now. Theater, movies hitting their stride, movies hitting their novelty point in the early part of the teens. Um, they're becoming, people don't have to go everywhere to New York or Paris or London or Tokyo or Berlin to watch a movie. They're becoming, or LA, to watch a movie. They're becoming, a little bit more accessible to people. And then in the 30s, they're becoming very accessible, and there's talkies now, etc. So of course, during that time, the movies are king. And then comes the 70s. People like Stephen Sondheim. Stephen Sondheim? Yeah, I'm almost positive. Stephen Sondheim are making strides through the 50s, 60s, and 70s to 60s and 70s anyway, to get back into plays. And then, of course, there's what's his name? Yeah, that's what I meant. Rodgers and Hammerstein, those kind of people as well. I mentioned Stephen Sondheim first because I'm going to be talking about Stephen Sondheim first. The Demon Barber of Fleet Street, blah blah blah. I can't talk. The Demon Barber of Fleet Street, Sweeney Todd, musical thriller from Stephen Sondheim. Turned into the Johnny Depp movie as well. Like, I can't really talk about Sweeney Todd all that much. I can barely talk about him in story form. I have neck issues. Anything that's neck slitty, it creeps me out way, way more than I can deal with. So, I didn't find Sweeney Todd all that scary in general, but anything neck related, I'm like, I'm done. I'm out. I'm finished. I can't deal with it. It's just one of my things. Sorry. So I couldn't get through it because it's one of my phobias, I suppose. But that would be the first one from 1979. 3 years later, you have another one, The Little Shop of Horrors, which was based on... The musical came from the Jack Nicholson and Roger Corman movie. Roger Corman, of course, being Roger Corman, who still doing horror movies since the 50s, the 40s maybe even. All the old Edgar Allan Poe ones, the Mask of the Red Death movie, etc., etc. And then he made a movie called Little Shop of Horrors with quite a few people. Jack Nicholson played the dentist, which was then done by Steve Martin in the movie version of the musical. Or am I getting that confused? I don't know what Jack Nicholson played, but I know Jack Nicholson was one of his very early roles. But the musical version came out in 1982. I think the Rick Moranis, Steve Martin, etc. film came out in 86. Where am I at here? I'm on all caps. Film. 1986. Yeah. And then finally, in 1986, Andrew Lloyd Webber adapts another famous horror book and onto the stage for Phantom of the Opera. Now I give him credit just for this scene. The masquerade scene creeped me the hell out. I don't think I made it through the movie. The movie I didn't enjoy, but the play I've seen once. I've only seen it once. Yeah. And it was frightening. I think most musicals are more intense emotionally than other plays. We could go further back, of course, to Shakespeare and Titus Andronicus and Hamlet's ghost and the ghost of Banquo in Macbeth. As say, but I mentioned them in standard standard history of horror. Don't really need to mention them in actual stage as well. But for stage stuff, Phantom does a good job of scaring the crap out of you. And then of course there's also the Lon Chaney versions in film. This film version of the musical didn't do anything for me. When I said I didn't even finish the musical, I just didn't enjoy it. Actually, it just didn't sound good on film. Literally, the sound of the film was wrong. But yeah, so Phantom of the Opera stage version was 1986. Stage stuff that came out since then, I can't think of anything. I'm not really up on my theater or dance, for that matter, or opera. I'm sure there are stuff, but well-known stuff that has hit my consciousness, there hasn't been any. Right. So, where are we at here? So next time. Next time we're going to continue with non-narrative horror. We're going to go into games, video games. And I think we're going to go into desktop games, and that will be it for section E. Video games, which is going to be a huge undertaking as well. Not as big as music, not as small as theater or poetry, but in between. Hopefully not as big as painting. And then after video games, desktop games, I think that's going to be it. And I'll do some wrap-up videos, and that'll be the end of the course. Wow. Oh my. This was a year of my life dedicated to this, or mostly dedicated to this. It's been fun. It's strange to think this is going to be coming up to an end. But folks, it has been a blast. And I'll see you next time for the next video. Thanks for watching Horror Analysis. See you next time.